Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. The Undisputed Sideshow, it is rattling down the rails at a high rate of speed. Who knows where this sort of train, which seemingly is filled with potentially disaster, where it's actually going to go. The past 24 to 48 hours for this presumptive fight between Anthony Joshua and Tyson Fury for all the marbles. There's a lot of news been going on. You've had on one side Bob Arum saying that a deal for July or August is dead in the water, and it's quite a bit to get through. And another comment he'd made is that this whole thing has been a mirage from promoter Eddie Hearn. So he seemingly is fed up, and we'll get to some of those comments. Eddie Hearn on the other side saying, well, it's all well and good for him to say that. I've got things actually where I want them. We're about to get a deal done. So this whole sort of saga, it was actually very much reminding me of 2018. And if you follow this channel for any length of time, you know that I didn't enjoy that Sideshow back in 2018. The sort of back and forth, he said, she said, and the whole thing fell over in the end and it never got done. And there's been shades of that with this whole thing as well. And sure, it might be a little bit different from 2018 because the parties aren't exactly the same. You know, sub in Tyson Fury for Deontay Wilder. Maybe there hasn't been as much acrimony. But we're getting to a point now where it sort of feels like it's getting to the real sharp end of whatever's going to happen, be that good or bad. So who knows where that, because remembering they were talking about maybe June for this fight. Now it's sort of slipping to potentially July or August, of which Bob Arum says dead in the water, that it's a mirage, etc. Is this actually going to happen this year? Because at the start of this year, I said on this channel, and I was talking about it in more sort of detail and length on my Patreon, I didn't think it was going to happen this year just because the pandemic, you know, they could potentially be leaving money on the table. You know, there wouldn't be the sort of massive crowd that they may otherwise get. Gate receipts are important after all. But just because it's the pandemic, it's a bit of a depressed sort of boxing market / landscape. Is this going to play out? Are we just being strung along here? Because for the first few months of the year, obviously we were saying, well, what's happening? Because it felt like, you know, we're being told all this stuff that this fight's going to happen, and it just kept drifting and drifting. And if they were going to have it in June, they sort of had to announce it in about March or so, because obviously training camps, build the fight, all that sort of stuff, all the razzmatazz, the marketing, everything that you need to do. But, you know, they made an announcement, a half announcement in mid-March, and that was contracts and the deal had been done for them to fight. But there was this one thing that was missing, where they were going to have it. And as I said at the time, that wasn't an inconsequential detail, because clearly they were looking for massive amounts of money. And we've been hearing that potentially $150 million for a site fee for Saudi Arabia for Jeddah. But this is where things have started to just, you know, grind to a halt to some extent, because remember, that was mid-March. Eddie Hearn said, we'd like to get a site deal confirmed in the next month. The hard part is always getting everybody to put pen to paper, but this was a major effort from all parties to get this over the line. You had rival promoters, rival networks, and rival fighters, and that's referring to the contract side of things, the agreement to fight, not for the site deal. So that is, 6 weeks ago or so. I guess this last sort of 24 hours, so I say all the other stuff, the preamble, to build to this moment, because it is coming to a head now. You've had a very direct sort of change from Bob Arum in his tone, in his manner, and his posture regarding this fight this week. And what's driven that? A little unclear, but it had been a situation just a week or so ago. He was saying that contracts were being drawn up. They were sort of marking up and doing sort of amendments, that sort of stuff. That seemed like that was, you know, pretty much at the end of the process. Maybe he wasn't privy to all of the details, but he's been saying publicly that it's dead in the water. So he said, it will take months for the Saudis to do their due diligence on such a huge deal. It's not just a site fee. There are ancillary demands from the Saudis stretching to the broadcast deals and other things. It could take months for all this to play out. It could be take until even 2022 the way it looks right now. Hopefully not 2022, but I mean, it is already almost mid-year 2021. It wouldn't shock me at all. I was saying I thought it would be 2022 at the start of this year. I just didn't think things were going to line up. But he says the fight in July or August is dead in the water as far as we're concerned. The two fighters need to go and have other fights this summer while the negotiations for that fight in the Middle East conclude. It's absurd what Hearn is saying, that it's a done deal. If we had just done a site deal without all the other complications that have arisen, we would have a fight by now. Tyson Fury is fuming about it and is refusing to keep waiting. And if it's not for July or August, then it's going to be for the end of the year. I can imagine why Tyson Fury would want to have a fight. He's been out of the ring since February 2020. So, that's a long time between drinks. It's already over a year right now. I mean, we don't know all the back and forwards with what's been happening with the Saudis and all these other sort of complicating factors that Bob Arum is describing, these ancillary demands, which also stretch into broadcast deals. So, I mean, when you start talking about that stuff, and if you've got more than just Sky, BT, ESPN, whoever's sort of carrying the fight or responsible for their piece, that's another sort of potential mouth in the trough. And of Eddie Hearn responding to some of this talk, he says, we're dealing with the same people who delivered the Ruiz fight for us. They've paid the money before. Bob Arum has not dealt with the site deal the size of this before. Leave it to me. We'll get it done. Also saying, I'm a one-man army going out to make this fight. Bob Arum moaning, get off your backside and do something yourself. No, leave it to Eddie. All right, if you're going to leave it to me, be quiet and wait for the contract. As we know, though, Arum says contracts have been exchanged, but there is some other factors at play here. And what has emerged as well is Mike Coppinger with the tweet, and I have no doubt this has been from the Eddie Hearn Matchroom side. Sources, despite Bob Arum's claims that Tyson Fury, Anthony Joshua is in serious jeopardy, a site deal worth more than $150 million is expected to be completed this weekend that will land the Undisputed Heavyweight Championship tilt in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia in early August. Okay, Riyadh. Is that so? Previously we'd heard Jeddah, so yeah, make of that what you will. We haven't had an official announcement on where it's going to be yet, but Saudi Arabia certainly seems to be the destination if this thing gets done. And that's the sort of the real question now. Is it going to get done? And not necessarily just for now, because I believe an undisputed fight will happen. It's more about the timing. I don't know if the timing is right just because can they make all the sort of money that they want to make, because this is a once-in-a-generation fight, and that's part of my reasoning for thinking it was always going to be more likely that it was going to be next year, 2022, at the earliest. So if they do get it over the line, yeah, that's all well and good, but there is going to be a lot of unhappy people if this falls over. And I think a lot of blame and blowback will come back on Eddie Hearn, because I know that there is a group of fans that will say, look, he's the one making the fight. But also, in the same breath, he's the one creating the expectation with fans. And you have to realize that. He's telling us these things are going to get done, the fight's going to happen. Originally for June, now we're talking July, August. And if these things push out, people will actually be blaming him for stringing this along, because he's created the expectation. As it was when he announced, against the wishes of, say, Bob Arum and also Frank Warren, that an agreement had been reached to fight. That was a marker in the sand moment to try to sort of, get fans believing that some progress and movement was happening with this whole thing, because it had been quite quiet for a while. But in the process, it created expectation that it was almost a done deal. He said the hard work was done. Clearly, there's still some hard work to be done. And I'm not trying to bash Eddie Hearn. He is obviously going out there trying to do his best to get this fight done. But if it doesn't work and it falls over and it doesn't get made for 2021, he will have to take some blame here. Clearly, he's progressed it, relatively far down the pipeline. But if it ends up being 2022 or not at all, there's going to be some unhappy people, and I can understand why. And in the meantime, you have to feel for the fighters as well, as because they've been inactive for a period of time. Joshua fighting towards the end of 2020, Fury the start of 2020. Fury wanted to be fighting at the end of 2020 and having a sort of, not a tune-up, but a stay busy type of fight, and it would have potentially been against Ajit Kabayal, and that's more than a stay busy. But if Fury fought him, he'd probably beat him. I think it would actually be a decent fight, but it's one of those fights that he should win because he is obviously considered, if not the number one, at least close to being the number one. So I guess there's other complicating factors as well, because not only do you have the site deal stuff, which I wonder, can they not confirm this in part because clearly the Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury mediation is still underway. And we know that because Bob Arum publicly stated that he's been in sort of meeting with the arbitrator, a retired judges looking at this case, that sort of stuff. Previously we've heard from the likes of Bob Arum and others previously saying, look, there's nothing to see here. This is pretty much over. Clearly not, because they were meeting with them. And if they're still meeting with them, it's still going on. And he actually sort of laid a carrot there and said, if this undisputed fight's not going to happen, the whole sort of thing with Wilder could turn into fight negotiation. So this is what Bob Arum has said. Maybe that's just a threat. But when you consider that a Wilder-Fury fight would be a pay-per-view based in the United States, surely that's got to suit ESPN much better than an undisputed fight, which is going to happen, in Saudi Arabia, which is more catering to the UK market because two UK fighters, different time zone, all that sort of stuff. You got to wonder what ESPN and Top Rank really want here, because, with some of the time that's gone past, and I think now that Deontay Wilder sort of settled down on social media, there's been a little bit of sort of dust that has settled. Actually, Wilder Fury 3, I think I'm more interested in it now than I was sort of in the immediate months after the fight. I do think Deontay Wilder has done irreparable damage to his own reputation through his foolishness, the comments that he's made, because clearly he is delusional. But that doesn't mean he can't fight. And obviously some people have been going crazy with some of the clip that had been posted with him working out with Malik Scott, which to me I was like, well, it's just an edited clip of him throwing some jabs from right hands. I mean, let's keep it in perspective. Anyway, that whole sort of situation with mediation and potentially that may get ruled against them. They may have to fight Deontay Wilder regardless. And I wonder if some of that whole sort of situation is part of the delay, that it's not just this other sort of stuff with the Saudis that is the whole kit and caboodle, if you see what I mean. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there, but I want your thoughts and comments on this undisputed sideshow. It really is like history repeating. Drop a comment loud and often, hit like, hit subscribe, follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.